Today we're going to look at chapters 2 and 3 of Ecclesiastes. And when we're reading through entire chapters, we're just not going to have time in the next 45 minutes to pick apart every word and sentence like I usually do in our studies. What I want you guys to do today, you can grab those Bibles. So what we're gonna do is read a chunk of verses, and I just want you guys to get the feel of what's in these verses, and then we'll just talk about them a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next chunk. But we're not going to read verse by verse, because then we would just spend all year on the book, and I don't want to do that. It would take a long time. Long time. Okay, so let's start at chapter 2. So just try to get a feeling. Don't get hung up on a certain word or sentence, but just try to get a feel of what it's saying. He's talking about finding the meaning of life, like we were watching in that video just now. And Solomon says here, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure. But surely this also was vanity. I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth, what does it accomplish? I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their lives. I made my works great. I built myself houses. I planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and orchards, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants, and had servants born in my house. Yes, I had greater possessions of herds and flocks than all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered for myself silver and gold, and the special treasures of kings and of the provinces. I acquired male and female singers, the delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kinds. So I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. So he's saying here, I had everything that somebody could think that would give you an enjoyable life. He said, I had lots of land, I had a beautiful house, I had lots of servants, I had lots of money, I had lots of power, I had lots of wives. And he even said there, I had people who would start singing whenever I walked into the room. Now, that's not even something I think I would even want, but that's what he even had. He had everything that your heart could desire.
Wait, who?
Solomon. He was the king of Israel. Has anyone ever even wanted a group of people who would sing whenever you walked in the room? You? I do remember when we were dating, and you said you had trouble getting up in the morning and you wanted to hire like a mariachi band to start playing in your room at 4 in the morning or to help you get out of bed. Or a barbershop quartet.
You know what? You need the band at the show, new Mexican national.
That's really that's the cherry on top. Singers for you. It was male singers. I didn't have women singers doing that. It was all male singers. So there's your barbershop quartet, Emily. What did all that get him? Look at verse 10. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor. And this was my reward from all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor on which I had toiled. And indeed, all was vanity and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. So what is a vanity when he says that? We talked about this last time. It means it's what? It means it's nothing. It's worthless. He says, it didn't get me anywhere. I got all this stuff, and he says, and then it didn't bring me the joy that I thought it would. It didn't make me happy like I thought it would. There's just a very basic fact of life that I only ever see the Bible tell us and psychologists tell us. Psychologists will tell you this. They know that when a person depends on some kind of materialistic thing to make them happy, on some kind of material good, when they depend on that, it only ever brings them to despair. They said they counsel people about that. Someone has all their joy and all their hope put into some material thing, if it's money or whatever, their car, their pet, is that what you said? Yeah, that's a good example. Their pet. And what could happen? Your pet can die, or you might think, oh, I love this so much, I want another pet. And then you love those two so much, you want a third pet.
Whenever you love them so much, like they're so cute, you just have to squeeze them.
Like on Despicable Me. They're so fluffy, I'm going to die.
I used to do that too.
And psychologists would tell you this. They said when people depend on some earthly material thing to make them happy, they will always just be led to despair because they'll just want more, and eventually they won't be able to get more. or whatever they love so much is going to leave them or die or whatever. It'll be gone at some point. And it crushes people. And the Bible tells us this too. I only see this from psychologists and from the Bible. Otherwise, anyone else will steer you wrong. Businessmen say, you want money? We'll just figure out a way to get you more money. Whatever you want, there's going to be someone there who will try to give you more of it. But the truth is, when all you live for is some kind of material thing, it is just going to crush you at some point. Eventually, it's not going to be enough. Or you'll get it and you'll realize it didn't make you happy. Like, we have the Olympics going on right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
And is it over now? I got an alert today that there's another medal given away. But
It was like the closing ceremony.
oh, okay. So think about this. There's some people, and there's been, I can't think of any names off the top of my head, but I've read one or two places where someone was like an Olympic gold medalist, and they trained most of their life to win a gold medal at the Olympics. And then they got it. And they're like, well, what's next? What else can I do with my life now? And they feel like their life has no purpose anymore because they've done what they wanted to do. It feels great at the moment.
Train for the next one.
Train for the next Olympics. Michael Phelps won a bunch more gold medals this year. But, you know,
How many did Usain Bolt win?
I don't know. But eventually, it will stop satisfying you. It'll run out. You might get too old to play in the Olympics. And then they're like, well, what do I do with my life now? And so that's just something to remember. That's what Solomon's telling us about here. He got everything he thought a man could want, but he just found it wasn't satisfying him. So look at verse 12. He said, then I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who succeeds the king? Only what he has already done. Then I saw that wisdom excels folly, as light excels darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. Yet I myself perceived that the same event happens to them all. So I said in my heart, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, this also is vanity, for there is no more remembrance of the wise than of the fool forever, since all that now is will be forgotten in the days to come. And how does a wise man die? As the fool. So this is a terrible thing to consider in going back to school right now. But Solomon's saying here, I put so much effort into being wise and smart and learning things. And he said, even that didn't get me anywhere. He says, even that wasn't enough. Even that did not satisfy him. And he gave 3 reasons there why that stuff did not satisfy him. He said, one, wisdom and intelligence, they can't be transferred. You can't leave it behind for someone else. Whenever you die, everything that you know dies with you. You can't transfer that to someone else. Like Brother Riley gave me a book that he had written just on like some reflections of his life and stuff like that. And I know he wants to leave something behind so that when he's not here anymore, there's something there that has some like stuff that he's learned that he wants other people to know. But you just can't take everything. I'm not saying he's on his deathbed or something like that. Oh, okay. You know, you can't take everything he's ever learned in all his life and give it away to someone. You just can't do that. So wisdom and intelligence can't be transferred. You can't leave it behind. And second of all, Solomon said, it doesn't guarantee happiness. Because no matter how smart and wise you are, you know, smart people still have problems. Dumb people have problems. Smart people have problems. I've heard it said, the only difference is that smart people can use bigger words to describe their problems. But otherwise, everybody's got problems. And then third, he says everybody dies in the end. Whether you're smart, whether you're dumb, whether you're wise, whether you're a fool, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, they all end up in the same place, dead, is what Solomon said. So he said even all the wisdom and stuff that he'd gathered through all his life, it still did not bring him happiness. When I was studying this, and this is a complete side note that has nothing to do with the lesson, you don't have to write this down in your notes, but as I was studying these verses in the King James, like when he says here, I made my works great, I built myself houses, I planted myself vineyards, I made myself gardens and orchards. When he's saying all that, I was studying it in the King James, and I could not shake that this sounded like a pirate. You see here? I just read this. He said, I made me great works, and I just could not, I couldn't not read it in a pirate voice. I made me great works. I builded me houses. I planted me vineyards. I made me gardens and orchards, and I planted trees in them of all kinds of fruits. You know, I can't not read that in a pirate voice whenever I read that. I made me great works.
At least we know you can do it.
What? Do the whole thing that way? That my voice would give out. But anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. I just thought of that as I was studying these verses. Let's get back into it. Verse 17. And he says, therefore I hated life because of the work that was done under the sun. And it was distressing to me, for all is vanity and grasping after the wind. Then I hated all my labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he'll be wise or a fool? Yet he will rule over all my labor in which I toiled, and in which I have shown myself wise under the sun. This also is vanity. Therefore, I turned my heart and despaired of all the labor in which I had toiled under the sun. For there is a man whose labor is with wisdom, knowledge, and skill. Yet he must leave his heritage to a man who has not labored for it. This also is a vanity and a great evil. For what has man for all his labor, and for the striving of his heart, with which he has toiled under the sun? For all his days are sorrowful, and his work is burdensome. Even in the night his heart takes no rest. This also is vanity. He's saying you can just work and work and work and do the best job that you want to, but you know what? Whenever you die, someone else, if you've accomplished anything, someone else is just going to inherit all the work that you've done. And they might be a moron. I mean, that's what he's saying here. They might run your work into the ground. And actually, when you look at Solomon's life, Solomon built a great kingdom, but whenever he died, his son became the king. And within like a year, the entire nation of Israel had split in two. They had a civil war in the first year because of how dumb his son was. And so actually, even what he's writing here, it came true in his own life, or after his life, actually. The declaration, yeah. Yeah, because this book is not positive at all, is it? Remember what I told you on the first lesson? Not everything in Ecclesiastes is true. Do you remember when I was saying that? Because what he's doing here is looking at it from a very godless point of view. Like, he'll get back to God in a second here, but he's looking at it all from, his own
image.
Yeah, he's looking at it all in earthly terms. So this is stuff that it's not always super Christian-y. That's why it's really sounding negative. Is that why you were asking? Yeah, like, why are you always so happy when all this stuff is what the Bible says? Because like I said on the first lesson, and I should have told you guys that who were new here, not everything in this book is really true. There is, what? Yeah, this book is taking a very negative outlook on life, but it's doing it because, whenever, like, when you go to buy an engagement ring for someone or a wedding ring, which you guys haven't done that, but I'm just saying, whenever you do that, they have the little sparkly diamonds on a black background. Why do they do that?
To make them look better.
Yeah, it really makes the diamond pop, like it really sparkles. Or when you open up the thing with the ring and there's like a little black interior on the diamond case, or in the ring case, it's to make it more sparkly and pretty, because the blackness behind it really just makes that diamond stand out. That's what this book is doing for us. It's really making things black so that whenever we get to the diamonds that are in this book, the diamonds shine a lot brighter. We're about to hit a diamond in a minute. But I'm just saying that's why there's all this bleakness and all this negativity, because then when it gets to the positive stuff in a minute, it's going to sound a lot better.
They're using it to contrast.
Yeah, they're using it to contrast. They're setting us up. So he's saying there, even all your work, it could just get handed off to a moron. The Declaration of Independence, you guys have probably heard this in school. It says that we have a right to life, liberty, and happiness, right? Don't we have a right to all three of those things?
Yeah.
Life, liberty, and happiness?
When we're going to write stuff down.
That's not what Will Smith said. Right. What's the actual quote from the Declaration of Independence? The pursuit of happiness.
I was going to say power.
No, it's the pursuit of happiness is what it says. Why does it say that you have a right to the pursuit of happiness, but you don't have a right to happiness? Why does it say that? Why did the Founding Fathers put that in there?
Because they can't guarantee your happiness.
Exactly. You read my notes.
No.
Well, I know you didn't literally read my notes, but that's exactly what it says. You can't guarantee happiness. Everyone has the right to try to be happy, but you can't guarantee that everyone's going to be happy or that it's going to work out for
We
everyone.
need to write something down.
Everyone has a different perspective.
In just a minute,
Let's
you
write
will.
this down.
No, not this. Not this. In just a minute, you will. What is happiness? I saw this quote on a TV show. A guy says, what is happiness? It's the moment before you realize you need happiness. You don't have to write that down. Happiness is the moment before you realize you need happiness. It means When you're happy, you're actually thinking about it. You're not thinking about how to get happier. You're just happy right then. Alexander the Great wept. It said he threw himself on his bed because he had accomplished so much, and he threw himself on his bed crying and said there are no more worlds left to conquer because he had been so successful. Man will always want more than he has in order to try to be happy. He will always want more. So there's been all this depression and gloom. Has Solomon, though, in all this gloomy stuff we've been talking about, has Solomon been talking about God? No, not at all. He hasn't mentioned God at all in here, has he? So he's just about to do that here in just a second. But I want you to make a note of something. We had the first 3 of these last time. But number 4 is, you are more than what you do. I want to put that here because he's talking here about your job and how some people, their job is their whole life. We live in a culture that thrives on careers. Everyone wants to know, what's your career goal? What is it that you do? What's your job? How much do you make in a year? The other day, Jonathan started college. And I said, hey, what's your major? What are you going for? He told me. He's got a good one picked out. I was asking him that because that's just what people in our culture are interested in. They want to know what your line of work is. They think that's a very big identifier of the type of person that you are. So people are always going to ask you that whenever you have a job. Hey, what do you do? How do you make money? How do you make a living? Whatever. So always be more than your job, because what you do might not last forever. I mean, whenever I read like a headline about a doctor has been fired and he's not allowed to practice medicine anymore, or like a lawyer has been disbarred because he's done something so bad he can't do law anymore. And I'm always like, man, that must really stink for them, because they spent all those years in college. They wanted to be a doctor, they wanted to be a lawyer, they wanted to be whatever. I think, man, they spent all that time trying to be something, and then they lose it all because maybe they made a dumb mistake or did something wrong. All that work, all those years they spent in training or in college, now they can't do that thing anymore. I bet it brings a lot of people to despair when they find themselves in that position. So there's 3 verses left here in chapter 2. It says, nothing is better for a man. This is the diamond. Nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy food in his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. For who can eat, or who can have enjoyment more than I? For God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight. But to the sinner he gives the work of gathering and collecting, that he may give to him who is good before God. This also is vanity and grasping after the wind. So what God is, or what Solomon's saying there, whenever you live for God, what you do for God is going to last. The stuff that you do for God is going to last. If you don't live for God, if you don't do stuff for God, he says your work will be forgotten. Someone else will get it. They might run it into the ground. It'll be lost. But whatever you do for God is never going to be lost. So that's the diamond right there. Does everybody get that point? Whatever you do for God, that is what will not be forgotten. That is what Solomon's saying here. That's what is going to last forever. I will read it in a second. Did Jesus say that we should pursue happiness? Did Jesus say to pursue happiness? He said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and everything else you need will be added unto you. So you seek the kingdom, and then everything you need is going to be added. Don't seek things, even if you think that they're important things that you need, but seek the kingdom first, and then everything you need is going to be added to you. So here's this eye doctor image. Say that the eye doctor tells you to read the 4th line. Okay, don't read it. Let's just say I'm taking my eye test. A lot of you guys have probably done one of these before. And he says, I want you to read the 4th line. So I say, okay, PECFD. And he's like, no.
That was the 5th one.
I know. He says, read the 4th line. So I go, okay, TOZ. And he goes, no. Read the 4th line. FELOPZD. And, let's say I just do that, and I don't look where he's telling me to look. Is he going to fix my eye problem?
Nope.
Is he going to get my eyes focused? Is he going to get me the right prescription?
No.
Of course not.
He's going to tell you to grow up.
Yeah, he's going to kick me out, and he's probably not going to be able to help me because I'm not looking at what he's telling me to look at. If we don't look at what God tells us to look at, then we're not going to grow as Christians. We're not going to get better. We're not going to see the things that God wants us to see. We're not going to get our vision corrected because we're not looking where God is telling us to look. So Jesus says, don't focus on these things all around us that are not going to bring us fulfillment, but focus on the kingdom. Because the fulfillment is not going to come from pleasure, treasure, money, or even how smart you are. But your fulfillment will only come from God in the end. So here's what I'm going to give you guys. I'm going to give you all a sticker, and here's what it says on it. It says, please Jesus. So this is what I'm giving you. There's something X'd out on the sticker. Do you guys see what it is? Yes. It's the comma. Yep. It means, whenever we pray, this is what we do. Oh, God, please give me this. Please give me that. Please, I need this or that. And we're always asking for things. But this is about changing your prayer. I want you to just put this sticker somewhere that you'll see it every day. Or stick it on your folder if you want. Don't put it somewhere that there's not supposed to be a sticker on it. But just put it somewhere. Don't pull it out unless you want to put it on your folder. That's fine. But put the sticker somewhere. And take the comma out of your prayer. Don't say, please, Jesus, give me this. But just make it, please, Jesus. That means pray about what you can do to please Jesus today. Not what Jesus can do to please you. Like that quote from the president. Don't ask what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And that's what we have to do with our prayers too. Don't ask God for, this is my list of what I want you to do for me today. But start your prayers with, what can I do to please you today, God? That's a better way to go about our prayers. That's putting our eyes in the right place.
God, that's not the stickers.
Well, what I'm going to have to do is cut these up into individual ones so people can take them home. But I'll give them at when we're done. Let's go on to chapter 3. Why is it that these material things in the world don't satisfy us? Chapter 3 is going to tell us the answer. Okay? It says, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to gain and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time of war and a time of peace. What was that?
What is it saying there?
It's saying there that there will be a time for everything. Everything is going to happen in a time. There will be a season for everything. And everything's not going to be forever. See, half the things in that list were good things. The other half of that list were bad things, right? There were some good things in that list. Good things are going to have their time. There's bad things in that list. Bad things are going to have their time. I love when I'm reading in the Bible and it will say this phrase, it came to pass. Has anyone ever been reading in the Bible and read that phrase before? And it came to pass. Blah, blah, blah. And I love reading that because, everything will come to pass. Even the bad times that we're in, they're going to come to pass at some point. So in all these verses, when it's saying a time to blah, 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 a time to blah, 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 here's what I want you to make a note of. When Ecclesiastes says time, it's not just saying, well, life is random and all this stuff just happens. That's not what it's saying. It means there's a divinely appointed, God-given time. Did you lose something right with, Nick? I thought you lost something right with. There's a divinely appointed, God-given time. When Ecclesiastes says there's a time for these things, yeah.
We're right on Ecclesiastes
2-3, yeah. For chapters 2 and 3. Yeah, it's saying there's a time that God has given us to do all this stuff. Or there's a time that God brings these things into our lives. Or that God allows certain things to happen. It's not just all happening randomly. But God appoints the things that come. When something, even bad stuff, when something bad happens in our lives, it didn't catch God off guard. He's not like, whoa, I didn't know this was coming. This one blew me away. How did that happen? I turned my back for 2 seconds and look what you guys did. It's not like that. But God sees everything that's coming. God allows things to come in for a time, and they're not going to be forever. So there was a list of 28 activities that Solomon gave right there. And I've heard it said that anything that you can possibly think of to do, or anything that happens to people in life, will fit into one of those 28 things right there. That it's comprehensive of everything. So I was looking at the list and I thought, like, this is the first thing that popped in my head. Because even though I'm 26 years old, my brain might not be there yet. The first thing I thought was, what about playing with Legos? What about making stuff with Legos?
That's what I thought you were going to think of.
For some reason, my mind went to Legos. I'm like, well, where's Legos in here?
Time to
Well, I
build.
look, a time to break down and a time to build up. So it is right there. And I thought, well, what else can I think of that would be in there? Watching Batman versus Superman.
Having Superman.
Time to rejoice and a time to mourn.
A time to weep is what I had. Playing dodgeball. The time to laugh. If you guys have seen my dodgeball skills.
I laughed and then I cried. I haven't seen your dodgeball skills.
Oh, I have to show you later.
That's how Donald Trump plays dodgeball.
Making fun of Emily. A time to tear down.
There's a good one.
No, there's one thing though. I found one thing that I don't think fits into any of these categories, and it was just on my mind this week, is Sharknado.
That's a good show.
I don't think that fits into any category
It's a story.
known to man.
That's a good
Sharknado.
movie.
I don't think there's ever a time for Sharknado. I haven't seen Sharknado, but
I have, it's good.
that's just my opinion on the matter.
Time to laugh.
Time to laugh. Maybe there you go.
Yeah, there was a part on Sharknado that was funny.
Okay,
It was weird.
let's read the next set of verses. Start at verse 9. What profit has the worker from that in which he labors? I have seen the God-given task with which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in its time, and this is the most important part. Also, he has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out from the work that God does from beginning to end. The most important part there. He has put eternity in their hearts. It says in verse 12, I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. We'll go on to verse 14. He says, I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing taken from it. Here's the note from that. Material things can't satisfy us because they are temporary and we are eternal. Yeah. I want you to write down material things can't satisfy us because they are temporary and we are eternal. That's why those things can't fill the void. They can't fill the hole because they're just temporary, but we're not. We live forever. We're eternal beings. God made us to live forever somewhere. So the things on earth, that he didn't make them to satisfy us for forever because they're not supposed to. The Bible said that God has put eternity in our heart. The heart of every man or woman. When I say man, I mean both. I'll give you guys an example. What's the longest I should probably focus this on more on the boys. What's the longest you could play a video game without getting bored? Because eventually you'll get bored of any game, right?
10 hours.
Whole day.
10 hours?
Well,
What
you
if you
know,
kept playing like more than 24 hours? You'd probably
10 hours.
5 minutes.
No joke, I actually did it 10 hours.
10 hours.
Jay remembers the football.
No matter how great a video game is, you'd only play it for maybe 10 hours at the very most. If you're really dedicated to it.
So bad.
Or 2 hours.
The longest I've ever played was 5 hours.
5 hours. There you go.
Congratulations, my longest was like 8 or 9.
Mine was like,
Eventually, though, you get bored from it. This guy right here, I don't know if that's the guy. That was the picture on the article. There's this guy, I don't know how to say his name, but he lived in Taiwan. It's like Haizea or something. And he played video games for 32 hours straight. And then he died.
that sounds what?
So you
He
never
literally
see
just...
that in the middle of church. Did he literally play them nonstop?
Uh-huh.
Looked that up and I'm like, whoa. You know, like, that's your next five.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, okay, so what is the medical thing behind
I don't know. His brain gave out from playing that much video games. He played for 32 hours straight, and he somehow died right then. I don't know if there's something wrong with him that he couldn't pull himself away from
that?
it,
Hey
or
guys,
if
I finally finished that.
they found him that he had died at an internet cafe, which I guess is like a public place. They found him there. He had died in his chair. He'd been on there for 32 hours.
I wonder if now.
You know, even your favorite movie of all time, The Empire Strikes Back for me. I've never got bored watching that movie. Back to the Future, The Sandlot. I've never gotten bored watching my favorite movie again and again, no matter how many times I've watched it. Now, but eventually I would, though. eventually I would get bored. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm just saying, eventually, even my favorite movie of all time would not satisfy me anymore. So anything in this world is temporary. It will not satisfy us forever. Our hearts and souls are eternal. Look at verse 15. That which is has already been, and that which is to be has already been. God requires an account of what is past. There is a man who, he asked God what 1,000 years was like to him, and God said, it's only like a second. And the guy said, well, God, what is $1 million like to you? And God said, just like a penny. So the man's eyes lit up and he says, hey, God, can I have a penny? And God said, yeah, just a second. The note I want you guys to make on that verse, God is not constrained by time.
Are all of these song titles?
Yeah. I was just using song things. God is not constrained by time. God is outside of time. God's outside of time. So, like, I think of it like a bookshelf. This is an illustration I like to use. In fact, the movie Interstellar, a few years ago, I saw that it did this same illustration, like, to explain time. But I'm like, hey, I thought of that first. But they did this in the movie where someone went to a bookshelf, but all the books represented time. So, like, say each of those books represents a year. So, like, you have 1994, 1995, 1996, 1997, okay? When God looks at time, see, we're in the book. We only know what the present moment is. We're one of the pages in the book for 2016 when we look at this bookshelf. We're just one of the pages in that book. God can go anywhere in time. You can say, I want to go back to 1993, and you can open it up. For 1993, it's just the present for the people in 1993. But God can just pop into it, and it's, for him, he can go into any time. He's the same God. The Bible tells us he's the same God yesterday, today, and forever. That's how God knows the future. When we talk about Bible prophecy, the things that we know will come true in the Bible, is because God can go into the future, pull out the book for some future date, and he knows what's going to happen. He can see the future. He can tell us those things. But we can't see them because we're just stuck at our present time. God told Moses, I am that I am. And when you read I am that I am, that means three things. It means I have been what I have been, I am what I am, and I will be what I will be. Yesterday, today, and forever, past, present, future, it's always the same God, because God is outside of time. And so that's why we'll always have satisfaction when we try to get to know God better. And getting more invested in material things will always lead us to dissatisfaction. So I know it can be hard to motivate yourself to pray and read your Bible and stuff like that sometimes. I know that can be hard. I understand. But, every time I read my Bible, every time I pray, I don't ever regret a second of it. I don't ever think, man, that was a waste of time reading that chapter. Or, man, I wish I had stopped praying 5 minutes sooner. That was a waste of time. I've never once felt like that. Whatever time you put into God and getting to know God better, it will never feel like wasted time. It'll be hard to maybe motivate yourself right at the start, but it'll always be worth it by the time you're done. Verse 16, moreover, I saw under the sun, in the place of judgment, wickedness was there, and in the place of righteousness, iniquity is there. And I said in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there's a time for every purpose and for every work. We turn on the news and we see terrible things a lot, and we can just be like, God, what are you going to do about all this? This stuff is just terrible. What are you ever going to do? And I was reading a book this week, and this book was printed years ago, but it said in there, it just felt like I was reading what I think when I look at today's headline. This book was from years ago, but it said, how did she get elected? How could they promote him of all people? How could anyone vote for that joker? How come she's not behind bars? And I just read that, and I'm like, man, that feels so much like when I turn on the news today and I look at stuff. Solomon is saying in these verses, though, it's easy to get overwhelmed with life. It's easy to get overwhelmed, but God is saying here, there will be a time to judge every deed of the righteous and the wicked. Nobody gets away with all their actions in the end, because there will be a time that God judges all of it. And that's what Solomon's saying there. Okay, verse 18. I think we'll read the rest of the chapter right here. I said in my heart, concerning the condition of the sons of men, God tests them that they may see that they themselves are like the animals. For what happens to the sons of men also happens to the animals. One thing befalls them, and as one dies, so dies the other. Surely they all have one breath. Man has no advantage over animals, for all is vanity. All go to one place, all are from the dust, and all return to dust. Who knows the spirit of the sons of men which goes upward, and the spirit of the animal which goes down to the earth? So I perceive that nothing is better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his heritage. For who can bring him to see what will happen after him? Okay, there's some weird stuff in those verses. It's saying man just has the same end as an animal. They all end up dying. And he's saying there, it's like man is no better than animals, because they all end up dying someday and turning to dust, which means, the deterioration of their bodies. But it said something there that was a little bit concerning. It said the animals have a spirit. The spirit of man goes upward and the spirit of animal goes downward. That's what he's saying. Now, remember what I said on the first lesson about Ecclesiastes. Is everything in Ecclesiastes true? No. And so whenever we read something like that, it can make us think, well, is this one of the things that's true or not true? Do animals have a spirit? I was at Watered Gardens, which is it's a homeless shelter. I was there a few years ago, and they were doing this Bible study. And I wasn't the one teaching it. I was just there as a volunteer, but there was another guy teaching it. And he was teaching it to all the homeless guys, and they all had Bibles, and they were going through. And one guy just asks a question. He says, well, something about animals having a spirit. He's like, well, what? Do animals go to heaven? Because the Bible says they have a spirit. And the teacher's like, the Bible says animals have spirits. The Bible doesn't say that, But this guy was like, yeah. And he says, it's in Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And he took him right to this verse. And the teacher is just really caught off guard by it, because it is kind of like an out of nowhere question. And then he reads it, and the teacher's just like, I guess animals do have spirits. I never heard that before. And he looked at me and he said, what do you think of that? And I'm not even teaching there. I'm just a volunteer. And I said, well, I haven't studied that part of the Bible, but I said to him, not everything in Ecclesiastes is true, because Solomon's writing from a different perspective of someone who's kind of just worldly, but not a follower of God. He's writing from just a worldly person's perspective. So I said, so you can't take everything in Ecclesiastes and say that it's always true. So I said, I haven't studied that part. I just know about Ecclesiastes. You can't trust everything that's in it, because he's writing from a non-biblical perspective to teach us some different types of truths about life. So I said that to him. And anyway, I'm just pointing that out to say, there's not always... We don't know every verse of the Bible memorized in our heads. Someone can pull something out and be like, well, what about this part? But you just want to, if you know a thing or two about Ecclesiastes, like I did, then I didn't know much about that verse, but I knew enough to kind of say, well, we don't always take everything seriously in Ecclesiastes, because it's got some stuff in it that Solomon's just writing from a worldly perspective. He's not always correct. But what does the Bible tell us about the difference in man and animals? Well, it says that man was made in the image of God. So man is something different from the animals, that God made man specially unique so that he's different from all the other things that he created. He said man is made in the image of God. From an earthly point of view, kind of like how Solomon is writing, from an earthly point of view, there is not a real big difference in man and animals. Because from an earthly point of view that doesn't think about God, they just say, well, animals just evolved into mankind, so man is just another type of animal. And they say man is just a classification of animal called Homo sapiens. They say stuff like that because that's how they've scientifically classified people. But the Bible tells us we're not just another species of animal, but we're something totally different from all the animals, that we're made in the image of God, so we are something kind of different. Now, man, a non-Christian person could just read those verses in Ecclesiastes, and they could just say, yeah, that's what I believe. Man's no really different from the animals, just like Solomon's saying right there. But, they say if man has a spirit, well, I guess that means turtles have spirits and whales have spirits, and they can just say whatever they want. If someone just doesn't believe in the Bible and they just want to say whatever they want, because that's what Ecclesiastes says there, but Ecclesiastes is not trying to be honest about what life is like. It is in some ways, but it's not in some ways. So we just got to take it a verse at a time and say, is this true? Does this line up with the rest of the Bible, or does it not? And human beings really are different from animals. Now, the last thing I wanted to have you guys make a note of from Ecclesiastes 3, it's this wonderful wisdom enjoy life. What did I put there?
Enjoy life when you.
Yeah. Not where you are, but when you are. This is the chapter that was about time, and it said there's a time for this and a time for that and time for blah, blah, blah. Well,
Yeah.
this is the chapter that said all that. And so I know we're carrying over from before, but enjoy life when you are, because we so often get in a hurry to get to the next thing in life, the next step. I watched this video a few weeks back that someone had shared on Facebook, and it was just like a little 1-minute video. A guy says, I was a kid and I was just dying to be a teenager. And then I became a teenager and I was just dying to get my license and drive. And then I got my license and I was dying to be an adult. And then I became an adult and then I was dying to get a great job and go to college. And I went to college and I got a great job. And then I was dying to have kids and dying to get married. So I got married and had kids. And then I was dying to have grandkids. So I had grandkids.
Be a kid again.
Yeah. And he goes on like all that and he says, you know what? Now I'm just dying because now he's an old man. He says, nothing left for me now. It's just,
so sad.
it is sad. And he says, you know what? The point of the video was I didn't stop to just enjoy where I was in life. But I was always thinking about what's the next thing going to be? What's the next step? What's the next big thing? And he didn't just stop to enjoy where he was right then, when he was right then. And so anyway, this last note here from Ecclesiastes 3, enjoy life when you are. Don't be so focused on the next stage of your life, but enjoy where you are right now, because you know what? It'll just be for a time. And then there will be a time for something else. And this time will be gone. And enjoy it just while it lasts. Know that enjoy the good times while you're in the good times. Don't just think, don't just think back on the old times. Don't just think of the times in the future, but think about where you are now and make the most of it now. And Lord, just help us to be satisfied with where you've put us. Amen.